Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This I'm doing in a different room. Take this out of my ear. Different room because someone's staying in the normal room on holiday. So today's topic, relevant to midlife, relevant to younger people, is the stock market. Everyone's talking about the stock market crash, blah 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 blah. So I thought I'd provide my 2 cents on it. And I say I provide my 2 cents because everybody has a view on this. I don't want to get too technical on the ins and outs of it, or political, because some of it is political. I guess my day job is to look at the stock market to recommend investments. So I do have at least some insight from a day-to-day perspective. Now, one thing we've got to always keep in mind is that over time, markets go up. That's a fact. The US market, the S&P, will go up over time. Now, over time is a very grey area in terms of defining a time period. If you look at 1999 to about 2009, it didn't actually do a lot. In fact, I think it was broadly flat net over that time period. So just because it goes up over time, it might necessarily go up over the time period that you want it to go. But historically, as profits grow and the stock market is a reflection of discounted future cash flows, profits in easy terms, the stock market should go up. Okay, I guess the one thing I would say with all of this, and again, without getting into the nitty gritty of strategy, is really we just need to relax. The worst thing you can do in this environment is to panic sell, unless you have to sell. That's a different matter. And if you have to sell, then ultimately you should look at how you have allocated your money, your capital, because no one should realistically be heavily exposed to the stock market and be forced to sell to pay the bills and so on. But that again is another story. But ultimately, this is about calm heads realizing this too will pass. Whether this too means 3 months, 6 months, a year, a 4-year term, don't know. But the reality is, over time, this too will pass. So first thing, don't panic. Secondly, look for community. And I say community in terms of people who will listen to your concerns and won't necessarily give you advice, but certainly will be a shoulder to cry on, rely on, whatever. But it's important to be around people rather than to suffer in silence. It's important to just stay healthy. Again, a lot of people don't align this with personal finance, but health is wealth. It's about having your physical well-being in a good shape, your mental well-being in a good shape, and that can help you get through the most stressful times. But ultimately, as I said, this is the type of thing that we've seen before: the COVID crash, global financial crisis, the dot-com bubble, 9/11 period, etc., etc. I'm not saying it's easy, because the reality is the concept of markets always going up, and it's a truism in terms of, generally speaking. I mean, it has historically gone up over time, but that doesn't cater or factor in the emotional roller coaster people will go on, or the behavioral biases that people have, the instinctive needing to sell. So I know I'm saying to be relaxed, but I totally appreciate that you may think in, or want to think in different ways, act in different ways. And I've been there. I have sold at the wrong time. I've bought at the wrong time. I should know better. I'm in the industry, but it doesn't really mean I don't have the same fallibilities as you. So all I would say is, in more broadly in terms of this, is again, don't panic on the money side in terms of your investments. Definitely still think about your career. And why I'm saying this is, we don't know how this tariff story is going to fully play out, but there are going to likely be second order effects. And what I mean by that is, the first order effect will be maybe higher prices in the shops. The second order effect is companies will try and pass it on to, well, companies are passing that on to the consumers. People aren't spending, companies start to cut jobs, etc., etc. So in other words, a economic downturn. And in that kind of environment, that second order effect could have a knock-on effect on you from a job security perspective. So think about what you can be doing to network, to have your CV ready, to have your LinkedIn profile up to date, and so on. On top of that, side hustles. Again, this is what I talked about the other week, the three legs of my stool: personal finance, your job, and your side hustle, or a way to make more money. So you should be thinking about how you can make more money. Now, that's a very broad way of looking at the world. And so, there are tons of resources, and I might talk about some ideas in future videos. But one thing I think we should all keep in mind is the way that you make your additional money, in many ways, should be different to how you're currently making it. And what I mean by that is, if, for example, you work for a bank, okay, so it's an easy metaphor for me to explain because that's what I do. If you work for a bank and banks are struggling and jobs are disappearing in the banking space, then everybody, or jobs get cut, people are back on the market. Those same people will be, firstly, looking in the same pool of jobs as you are. Secondly, very often they'll be trying to use those same skills that you are in their side hustle. So it might be, you might be trying to write about finance, or you might be a compliance officer looking to outsource your services, etc., etc. Well, so are the other hundreds of thousands of people. Now, it's not to say you can't do that, and I do think you should play to your strengths. But if you're able to pivot to a space that is almost counter to what you're doing, all the better. So from my perspective, for example, I am in the banking world, but one of my hustles is career coaching, because in a scenario where people lose jobs, they will be looking for jobs. So it's almost counter-cyclical to the industry I'm in, whereby when things are going well, they might not be looking for a career coach. But when things are going badly, they might be looking for a career coach. So that's one way of looking at it. And there are different ways in which you should consider this. But some of this is really about looking at your skills and your knowledge and trying to look for skills and knowledge arbitrage. And what I mean by that is, if you are a concert pianist, for example, you lose your job as a concert pianist. Well, your skills and knowledge are pretty much likely to be far better than your average music teacher. So, in other words, you could still use your skills in a way that are embraced in a different type of area. Maybe, obviously, you won't have the same gravitas, maybe not the same salary, but you can think of that as a potential opportunity, particularly as, say, a concert pianist. You could privately tutor high net worth kids who'd be willing to pay the extra bit for a concert pianist rather than your average music teacher. This is just a tangential thinking that I've got now in terms of how to position yourself around the side hustle. The reality is, everybody needs to think about side hustles, but everyone can't be an Uber driver. Everyone's not going to be able to cluster around the same roles because, again, that's additional competition. So think about how you can use your skills in a way that gives you an edge. Okay, so if you found this interesting, like and subscribe. Again, I tend to talk about midlife things, but I'm also going to talk a lot more about careers and finance, because that's what I know about, that's what I've trained in. And yeah, until next time, bye bye.